We got the Players' Championship that kicked off today at TPC Sawgrass in Florida. I don't know, some folks maybe call it the fifth major. It's a pretty damn big tournament, and it is the signal that the Masters is just around the corner. And so let's talk a little golf here with John Haslbauer. He does golf betting and fantasy articles for Lineups, and he's the co-host of the Preferred Lines podcast, which is a golf betting show. And you can check him out on Twitter at PGA Tout. John, it's Pat Boyle. How you doing, man? Thanks for spending some time.
I'm great. Happy March. Thanks for having me on. Excited to talk to you.
Hell yeah, brother. Look, you know the Masters are around the corner, like I said, when the Players' Championship kicks off, and the first round is in the books. A wild one, to say the least. Before the tournament began, Scottie Scheffler, no surprise, was a short favorite at under 5-1. He shot par in his opening round. Was that a surprise to you? And does that maybe open up some value now for the rest of the weekend on the number one player in the world?
Yeah, it continues to be surprising how disappointing Scottie Scheffler's been on the opening round. He looked himself in the very first tournament of the year at the American Express. He coasted to victory there. Then he really hasn't looked like himself, specifically in the first round, ever since then. He's coming off his worst approach performance of the season last week. And so from that end, he wasn't as threatening of a presence going into the Players as we normally would treat Scottie Scheffler, who's won this event twice in the last 3 years. But you look at the board, he had a pretty pedestrian, even par round. He's still second on the odds board live at 9-1. So, everybody's still a little bit scared of what's to come from Scheffler. He's like a sleeping giant in this field, it feels like.
I definitely would not be wanting to go against Scottie Scheffler heading into Sunday morning if he's anywhere within a couple of strokes. John, just really quickly, break down the famous TPC Sawgrass for us. And what about the course, the conditions, and, of course, the wind? Makes this a challenging course, not only for the golfers, but for folks that are looking to put a couple of bucks on it.
Not only is it challenging, it's volatile. There's water in play on 17 of 18 holes, and there's a lot of wind in Ponte Vedra Beach where TPC Sawgrass is. And because of the stadium setting and all the grandstands that are there, you get this sort of swirling wind effect on some of these holes. It's almost like playing at MetLife in a football game when kickers are trying to figure out, is it coming from the left or from the right? So it's a challenging wind to figure out. And because of all these variables, it's a really tough course to repeat year over year. We see a lot of guys contend one year, miss the cut the next year. So it opens it up to a lot of long shots being in the mix here. But ultimately, it's a positional course. It's not the longest on tour, and it is a bit of an anomaly where you can't overpower this course. You can't just hit driver everywhere. You have to play controlled, play disciplined, play strategic, and it really rewards accuracy and the guys who are hitting their irons consistently above all else.
Talking with John Haslbauer here on BetMGM tonight, Westwood One Sports. I'm Pat Boyle. He does golf betting and fantasy articles for Lineups, and he's the co-host of the Preferred Lines podcast. John, Colin Morikawa is getting a lot of love this week, and then bang, withdraws from the tournament after just one hole today because of a back injury that he picked up on a practice swing on the 11th tee box. He said, quote, "I felt fine in warm-up, like no signs of back problems, teed it up on 11, took one practice swing, and I just knew it was gone. Like I just had the feeling before when it's happened, and I can't swing through it. Trust me, I would play if I could. It's just the worst thing in the world," end quote. What does this mean now for the other favorites here this weekend? Because I believe Morikawa was third on the odds going into this weekend. And what does this mean for Colin Morikawa going forward with the Masters just a month away?
Yeah, it's just a totally unprecedented freak injury. This would be like if AJ Dybantsa sprained his ankle on the opening tip-off of the round of 64, right? Like this guy had high hopes. People really expected Colin Morikawa to be in the mix, and he was playing the best golf we've ever seen from him. He won, 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago at the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, and then followed that up with a couple back-to-back top tens. So he was clicking on all cylinders. Everybody was, significant handle on Colin Morikawa this week. And then, I'm sure BetMGM couldn't be happier. They collected a lot of money off of that early withdrawal from Colin Morikawa. What does it mean for the rest of the field? I think it's wide open. You see a lot of names at the top of unexpected names. You've got Sahith Theegala, Seth Straka, Austin Smotherman up there. So it's really kind of a motley crew. It's not the odds-on favorites we expected, but as the week goes on, the cream does tend to rise to the top. So, yeah, it could open up some opportunity to buy low on some more proven players who had maybe a slower start.
Yeah, I like Sahith Theegala, man. I mean, that's a guy that has grinded his way, up the tour here over the last couple of years. 3 birdies in a row to start the day. Had an eagle on 12 today. He played some really damn good ball. John, speaking of backs, What's going on with Rory McIlroy's back? The defending Masters champ had some injury concerns with his back heading into this tournament. He carded a plus 274 today in his first round. I mean, is it even worth touching Rory for the rest of this weekend? And then I know he's still got a month, but are you worried about his ability to make another run at Augusta?
I'm not worried about it. He withdrew at the Arnold Palmer Invitational last week for precautionary reasons after the second round, I believe. So it wasn't a Colin Morikawa situation where he just couldn't swing the club. It seemed more precautionary, and he did give it a go this week when there was a lot of speculation about him being a game time decision going into today. So obviously you don't like to see the +2 from Rory. He's the defending champion here. And I'm sure he's disappointed with that. That probably lends itself to, believing that he probably is playing less than 100%. That said, if he wakes up on the right side of the bed tomorrow, +2 is not out of this tournament by any means. You're going to make bogeys here. He's only, 6 or 7 strokes off the lead. He can make that up as quick as anybody. And I believe his odds are as long as 100 to 1 when he opened the week at about 20 to 1. So no, I don't think he's completely out of the tournament. Do I expect him to win? No, but how often do you have the chance to bet Rory McIlroy at 100 to 1?
Not very often. Not often at all. Speaking of long shots, which I guess, like you said, Rory McIlroy is now one. You mentioned the leaderboard with a couple of guys, 5 guys at 5 under here, including Theegala, Sepp Straka, Maverick McNeely, Lee Hodges, and Austin Smotherman. Any long shots you have for the Players' Championship, like maybe going into the weekend that you'd like to share, but after round 1, anybody catch your eye at a big price that you'd want to take a closer look at the rest of this weekend?
Sepp Straka was a guy who opened around 60 to 1 on Sunday. Some people, if you're able to take advantage of that number before his finish at the Arnold Palmer last week, you got some good CLV on that, and he's now obviously tied for the lead. So that's somebody that I'll be paying very close attention to for the rest of this tournament. I think it's a good setup for him. He's a Georgia native, always played great on Bermuda courses, and has a good stretch of a couple top 15s here over the last few years. So hopefully Sepp Straka can keep it going. Cameron Young is another player I was very high on going into this week, who had poor course history before this year. He looked great today. He didn't even get the most favorable weather splits. He was playing in some windy conditions and still is just 1 stroke off the lead. Somebody who has a lot of power, can reach these par 5s and generate those birdie opportunities. So when I look at the top of the board, those are 2 guys that I have confidence in, have a little bit of staying power. And if I'm looking further down the board, I do still like Minwoo Lee. That's another player I was pretty high on coming into this week. He's currently about 95 to 1 after a slow start, but he's even par. So he's still only about 5 or 6 off the lead going into tomorrow with three rounds to play. He missed 3 straight very short putts to open his round, very uncharacteristic of him, and rebounded very nicely to get himself back to even par. And he's been, in a share of the lead twice on the weekend at this event over the last 3 years. So he knows how to mix at this event and has all the tools you need to succeed at TPC Sawgrass. So I look at that number, and I think that's something that has a ton of value as we look to the rest of the tournament.
Talking with John Haslbauer here for another minute or so on BetMGM tonight. You can follow him on Twitter at PGA We're breaking down the Players' Championship. Let's look forward through the rest of 2026 here, John. Who's a golfer that you think could open a lot of eyes this year and be a dark horse to win a major in 2026, if it's not any of the guys that you just mentioned?
Yeah, Jake Knapp, I would say, is the guy to keep an eye on. He had a little disappointing start to this week. We talk about the theme of back injuries. He's another one who's got one that's kind of lingering. It seems to have affected his play after taking a week off at Arnold Palmer. But this is a guy who actually leads the PGA Tour in total strokes gained on the year. So he's gained more strokes than Scottie Scheffler, Rory McIlroy even. And he just, if you watch this guy hit a golf ball, he looks like one of the elites, and he's kind of finally caught his stride where he is contending regardless of the course setup. So he's got a good game that measures up for Augusta. He's got the length to handle a U.S. Open course. And he's been playing well in these windier, linksy types of environments too. So Jake Knapp is a guy who has some pretty decent value on his number. And I'll be looking his way. Another guy I would keep an eye on is Daniel Berger, who came off a good kind of comeback last week, almost won the Arnold Palmer Invitational, but has a sort of game that translates very well to some of the venues that we have coming up, like Shinnecock and Royal Burkdale.
All right, John. Hey, awesome stuff, man. Really appreciate your time, and enjoy the rest of the weekend. Good luck with all your plays, and hopefully the win isn't too brutal, and hopefully Rory's back, wakes up, hopefully he wakes up on the right side of the bed tomorrow.